Hi everyone, we're back in the paddock at Monza. Weather is still great. What a result today. You come to an Italian Grand Prix, there's nothing better than seeing a Ferrari win. Bit of a shock, but great performance, wasn't it, from Charles Leclerc?
Absolutely, you know, it's sort of been such up and down season for their form that it really is quite a surprise. And yeah, special to have seen that. I think, you know, we were in the press room when everything had finished, to hear the Italian fans singing along with the national anthem. Like, it just raucous. It was really nice. It's good sport. But wow, what a drive from Charles Leclerc. I think no one predicting it pre-race because of McLaren locking it out 1-2 on the grid. We'll come to them. But I think yeah, effectively what happened was that he was in a position where it was win or bust, and bust was P3. There wasn't even that much of a risk, really. So as soon as Oscar Piastri pitted out in front of him, Lando Norris obviously having already done that, with McLaren committing to the two-stopper, Leclerc just feeling on his car, immediately felt better, his front grip came back, and from that, he'd already learned quite a lot through the weekend. So going back to FP2, because again, I know some people find this really boring tyre chat, his driving came to be crucial. He went off way too hard in his race simulation, his race prep. Back on Friday, much gentler it seems this time around. The fact that his car balance was pretty good, you know, pretty neutral, nothing standing out and making him slide around a lot. And that meant that with that skinny rear wing on the back of the Ferrari, they were rapid down the straights, they weren't killing their tyres in the corners, and suddenly the one-stopper was on. And it was always like the quickest way to do it. Like, there was a lot of chat about, would this actually be the case?
Well, you said Pirelli had been saying this all weekend, haven't they?
Exactly, they'd insisted it. Lando Norris said in the press conference, we knew it was the quickest way of doing it, but McLaren were worried about something they'd seen in FP2, which is that when the tyres grained, it became much easier to like lock up, make a mistake, slide on, and then your race potentially is completely ruined. So they were just like, we can't afford to do that. I think also they were just focused on just doing as quickly as possible, and almost being surprised that it went as well as it did for Ferrari. But yeah, the other little things that I thought stood out from Leclerc was saying, you know, the sort of emotions. He said he didn't expect a second Monza win to feel as good as 2019. Yeah. In fact, it does. He said his mum didn't have a paddock pass in 2019, so he was was looking at the grandstand every time he went by 5 years ago. But this time she's in there with him. Saw him giving her a nice hug ahead of their group photo. But yeah, I don't know about what you feel about this, Mark. This season has been a season of feel-good victories.
Yeah, I agree with that.
His appendix, Norris's first win, Leclerc at home. Yeah. Do you think this was another one?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Leclerc said that, didn't he? He said, look, if I could pick 2 races to win every year, it would be Monaco and here. We know why. We know the feeling you get. Like you mentioned, the crowd were insane today, weren't they? Those laps were ticking off towards the end. Every time he came past, it was like they'll get a bit louder and louder and louder. Yeah, of course, it makes so much sense for a man to come here. I think we have to give Sainz a shout. He played his role. He was a bit further back in the fight, so obviously the McLarens were able to pick him off. But I think he gave some data that was vital to make sure they knew that they could do what they were doing with Leclerc. And it's a pat on the back for Ferrari. How many years have they made, you know, mistakes with strategy, and it's cost them? Whereas today, actually, they've got the ultimate prize. Probably the race they'd have picked out of them all this year. I'm sure they'd have picked all of them if they could, but it's not been that kind of season at all, has it? So
no, not at all. And it's interesting on Sainz again, helping Leclerc in another way, in that he especially had to overtake him into the Ferrari. We saw that. It was a great pass, but that little bit of a delay ultimately helped things. And Piastri slamming Lance Stroll in Aston Martin, said it was like he was driving his first go-kart race at one point when it came to lapping. He was absolutely fuming. Only cost him a second, but when considering he lost the race for what, under 4 seconds?
Yeah, it was three something, wasn't it? For sure.
It's quite costly. Pit stops as well. They're very inconsistent up and down the grid. But obviously, the sort of more controversial talking point from the race, especially from McLaren, that lap 1 battle, Oscar Piastri going around the outside of Lando Norris in the second chicane, Norris nearly dropping it. Did that cost them the win, do you think?
No, I don't think it cost them the win. I think it could have
been argued with you in a minute.
Yeah, so. In a weird way, it could be bigger than that. It could cost them more than that when we get further down the line. We were talking on the way here, the Constructors' title, I think, by when we're doing this after Baku, I think McLaren will be leading that. But the drivers is a completely different story. Taken on a week where Verstappen had one of the worst races he's had for a very long time, is damage limitations, really, isn't it? He was nowhere near it today, Verstappen. Yet Norris can only take third. Yes, the bonus of the fastest lap. But Toto Wolff, I've just come from, and he was asked, were you surprised that Piastri went flying past him in turn 4? And he said, look, Andrea Stella he's got a racer's soul. He wants to let them race, but he believes now there might be a bit of a conversation. He said there won't be rules of engagement, but there'll be, you know, guidelines that might be put in place to maybe nudge it towards Lando, especially I guess if they are both doing what they're doing at the moment. It's not like Verstappen and Perez, you've got these two that are up the front, they're taking points, they're taking podiums. Does it really matter to the team which of those is winning races as long as it brings home the Constructors' Championship? And there's no way now, there's no way on earth Piastri wins the Drivers' Championship. So, you know, do you go all in now, try and get both of them? Now you can tell me off.
Absolutely you do, you're entirely right with that. But I think, and this is just a theory, but it's sort of an educated guess, we've spoken to enough people in the paddock to sort of to know this, and also based on historical things that have happened. If Lando Norris is leading at the end of lap 1 with his teammate behind, he's critically in clean air, because that car balance that I was talking about with Leclerc, when you're following other cars closely, you're just sliding around more and more, and you're wearing a tyre. It's nice, like my left front, I don't know what's going on. Well, you're probably sliding more, Lando. There's probably a bit of an explanation there. Historically, he's been better on tyres than Piastri, and therefore if he's leading at the end of lap 1, plus the fact it's a McLaren 1-2, and that's a significant buffer to other teams attacking from behind, and potentially that means Leclerc never ends up in that clean air. He doesn't realise that the front grip is going to come back to him, and it doesn't change the race so much. So yeah, I think I would reflect on that. Andrea Stella has promised they're going to review what happened at Zone 1. Maybe team orders should have been imposed already, but yeah, I think that's potentially a win, because as good as Leclerc was and as good as Ferrari were, this very much was a McLaren victory loss.
Yeah, they took full advantage of what happened at McLaren for sure, didn't they? Yeah, that's fair. Red Bull, we just touched on there. Shocker, wasn't it, of a weekend for those?
A horror show, and it turns out Max Verstappen's engine wasn't even able to perform at full power. They had to turn it down because of an issue there. So yeah, it's hard to see any positives at all from this weekend. I think qualifying, we've learned a little bit more now, explained about things that, yeah, it looked good in Q2, but actually it's because of the circumstances of what they were doing with cooling the tyres down, the track gripping up, whereas, you know, when it always came to the new tyres, Red Bull's not able to follow McLaren, not be as good as McLaren in terms of getting the tyre preparation and the changes needed to go with the track. But yeah, obviously Max was right to be pessimistic yesterday. You know, he as much as McLaren was sort of highlighting, as they always do, it's a good deflection point to say, oh yeah, he'll be coming right back past us. He was like, look, if I've got no balance today, I'm not going to have any balance tomorrow, therefore I'm not going to be able to do it on tyres. And he didn't. And it's interesting, you know, it's he's pretty damning of what's going on at the team. He says we've turned a dominant car into a monster. And
not in a good way.
No, not in a good way. And I assume that Max isn't playing 4D chess, and that's some sort of subtle joke about how a rival energy drink is better than the one that he's supplied on. But anyway, but he does it. It highlights just how suddenly. Well, I suppose he's 6 months, but considering how big the swing is, it feels like it's suddenly really turned around on Red Bull.
I thought I'd touch on, because I sat next to Alex today watching the race. You have the radio channel on. He's just, every race at the moment, I know he complained, like when he's not winning, he's been complaining and gets angry, but it's almost like he's given up almost when you hear some of those messages. He was complaining about the back markers today. It's almost like there's still this complete disconnect with what's actually happening on the track, and that he's in a title fight. He just seems to go, right, this isn't happening for me today. We saw when he came out of the pits after the slow stop, he was slamming on the wheel, and he's just such a frustrated guy at the moment. And I don't know how that quickly that switch comes either. I think it's something with the car needs to change, but also his mentality. Whether those two things will dovetail, and it will happen if they go to back and wipe the floor of the other one. Don't think they will, but I'm sure he'll be perkier. But he just doesn't seem at all happy at the moment, does he?
No, but I don't think it's a case of him sort of almost giving up. I think if anything, I would interpret this as a change of tacts from Max, because he basically just tried to smash heads together in Hungary, and that was what all that shouting and angst was about. And it's exactly the same thing. Like, he's basically saying, look, I've been feeling like this since May, and I won a load of races that I probably shouldn't have won. And actually, I think potentially this is dare I say, a more mature Max.
Yeah, maybe,
because he's just realised that it's not going to work me constantly beating the team. Fine, I'll beat my steering wheel, but it's just I struck me. It was earlier in the weekend that he was keeping things cool, but yeah, still not great for Max Verstappen. But at least he'll be racing in Baku, unlike Kevin Magnussen. Now, the Haas motorhome just over there, he crashes with Pierre Gasly, goes off. It's the second chicane. There'd already been another incident there between the two of them before that didn't even really get looked at, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, gets his penalty points, not racing for Baku. I mean, what do you make of that?
Does his reputation precede him a little bit there? He's got 10 points anyway. We saw another couple of collisions today. Hulkenberg, I think, got a penalty. Ricciardo got a time penalty. So, maybe it's slightly worse than them, but it does feel a bit like, he's the man who always gets the point, so we're going to give him 2 more.
But yeah, we'll see him in Singapore.